metabolic health. I do think it's truly foundational to women's health, to reproductive health, and most people they don't even think about that until they're already struggling.
Trying to conceive isn't just a physical journey. It's one of the most mentally and emotionally demanding experiences a couple can go through. And it's time we start talking about all of it. Hi, I'm Denise Erez, your fertility godmother, and this show is for the woman who wants to optimize their health, who is trying to conceive and wants real, honest support, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, without the overwhelm. Because this journey isn't just about getting pregnant. It's about who you become through it. And you don't have to navigate it alone. So take a deep breath. You're in the right place. Let's do this together. And welcome to the Fertility Godmother Show. Today, we're talking about something that's become a really important conversation in women's health. Metabolic health, fasting, hormones, fertility, and how we can better support our bodies at every stage of life. So could the health of your metabolism be affecting everything from your hormones, your fertility, to how you experience menopause? I'm so excited because my guest today is Ashley Bizzell. She is a registered dietitian, certified diabetes care and education specialist, and someone with more than 20 years of experience helping people improve their health through nutrition and metabolic care. Ashley is the director of clinical nutrition and global training at L-Nutra Health, which is the medical division behind Prolon. And this is where she works closely with clinicians and teams around the world, bringing evidence-based nutrition strategies to people struggling with things like diabetes, metabolic health challenges, and chronic disease. After more than a decade in hospital-based clinical practice, Ashley transitioned into preventative and lifestyle medicine, where she has firsthand seen the transformative impact that nutrition can have on long-term health and metabolic wellness. And today, we're diving into a conversation I think so many women need to hear. What role does metabolic health really play in fertility, hormone balance, and menopause? Ashley, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Denise. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and your listeners, and just to be able to have a conversation with you about metabolic health, which I think is a word we hear about, and there's a lot of confusion around metabolic health, but I do think it's truly foundational to women's health, to reproductive health, and most people don't even know about. They don't even think about that until they're already struggling.
You're so right. So, tell me a little bit about metabolic health. Like, what does that actually mean? What should people be looking for?
Yeah, I think, when I think of metabolic health, that's such a kind of a broad term. A lot of times we think about, what does our fasting glucose look like? Where is our weight? A lot of times we associate that in
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Inflammation and insulin resistance and all of these things that kind of impact all of our systems, how they all really function together. Our hormones, our digestion, everything is kind of impacted and lumped in to metabolic health.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot going on there. So those are the things we want to be thinking about. Then we can associate with metabolic health and just pretty much everything, how it
Yeah.
affects our hormones and everything. That's very helpful because we really need to be thinking about all of those things. And I think it's important to, like you said, maybe even paying attention to before we actually start to get those diseases or the weight gain or the high glucose levels, all those things. So it's really good to know what to pay attention to. And I think especially with women, one thing that I really enjoyed when I met with you the other day is our conversation about women's health and Prolon. But before we go into that, can you just share a little bit about what Prolon is in case somebody's just hearing about it for the first time?
Yes, absolutely. Prolon is consumer company really created around the fasting mimicking diet. So you may hear a lot of people refer to it as FMD. That's how we refer to it here. But it's essentially a medical nutrition. It's very precise medical nutrition designed with years of research. Let's say even 25 plus years of research, NIH and European funding to allow the body to get nourishment, but the benefits of a prolonged fast. So it's essentially a 5-day kit, so to speak, where you get breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, nutrition, but you lie under the radar, and your body thinks you're fasting. So it's really cool nutritechnology.
I love that. And it's been studied for, is it 20 years, 25 years?
Yes, over 25 years, very science-based, a really cool history too. Our founder, Dr. Walter Longo, who works at the Longevity Institute at USC and is also in Milan, he's really the creator behind the fasting mimicking diet. And he was researching, this is a really cool story. If you don't mind me sharing, Denise, I always
Please,
love,
fun.
for people to understand the background. He was researching this population of people in Ecuador who from an outward appearance didn't necessarily look like they would be protected from diseases like cardiovascular disease and diabetes, and they were shorter in stature. And so I was trying to figure out what's unique about this population. And we found out they had something called the Loran syndrome. And with that is a deficiency of IGF-1. Just so everyone knows, that's insulin growth factor. And he found that that was related to aging. And
Oh,
so many of us over trigger that through the years and have more accelerated aging. So he really created this 5-day fast because if we don't trigger that so frequently, then we can also see a reduction in inflammation, insulin resistance, and these common age-related diseases like diabetes and cardiovascular disease.
that's very fascinating. And what a find. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I love that. And then those things like diabetes and inflammation, those are really, it's impact us, cardiovascular health, the quality of life that we have and the aging.
All interrelated as well. It's got that metabolic thread among all of those. And so it really, I still think it's incredible how that came to be. And he was even
Incredible.
researching like cancer and other ways that this tool could be used. So there's lots and lots of research out there and clinical trials.
And I love that because there's so many, if people are interested in doing this fasting, there's some things that are out there that may not be, that could be actually harmful for us. Would you agree?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's a lot of noise, as you
There's
know,
a lot
in
of
all
noise.
different aspects of health.
Beautiful.
But with fasting too, a lot of people hear fasting and they're really referring to intermittent fasting. And I always like to differentiate those two because there's benefits to intermittent fasting, weight loss benefits, and even metabolic benefits and helping with some cravings. But when we do a prolonged fast, it allows our bodies to get into this fancy term called autophagy. The first part of that word, auto, meaning self, and then phagy, meaning eat. It's really our body's recycling mechanism that it innately knows how to do that. We just rarely give it the opportunity. And in our day and age of DoorDash and Starbucks on every corner and
Mm.
overconsumption of foods, our bodies just don't get that cleanup time. So
Yeah, it's so true. And the eating. So, what do you think then about fasting? And I know we're differentiating intermittent fasting for women. I mean, do you think that that's its benefit? Because I've heard mixed, especially for intermittent fasting. Heard mixed, results or research on that.
yes, I think, and even last year, I feel like in the spring there was some information that came out about harmful effects of intermittent fasting with even cardiovascular disease. I think it's really all about how it's done, Are you still getting the right nutrients? Because we still need nutrients in our body. And it is a stress on the body. Intermittent fasting is a stress. The prolonged fasting can be a stress, even though you're getting nourishment. Exercise is a stress on the body, but we never associate that as being bad for us because it's not. When stress is in small doses, it can have some positive impacts. It's just when it's that chronic stress that it can be challenging on the health. So for women that I work with that are doing intermittent fasting, sometimes they're having such a small eating window and not really getting enough nutrients they need to support their bodies, their metabolic health, which is really kind of how our body uses and processes energy. And so it's really important not to have things that are too extreme every single day. That's when it can be really, I feel, harmful for the
Mm.
body.
That's great distinction to, every single day, because that's something that I see in, when I'm working with women as well, is, or anybody who's doing these, including my husband, we were talking about the other day. I'm like, are you getting enough nutrients? Because you have to maintain your muscle and your hormones and our energy, all the energy that requires when we're doing that. And then so if you're just allowing yourself like one meal a day, that's a gigantic meal. Like I don't think we can even break it all down. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's hard to achieve, the fiber that's recommended for gut health. If you're having one meal, it would be really uncomfortable to try to get 35
Yeah,
grams in that meal or, just any of the nutrients that we need all day long. So it's important because, women, we're hard on ourselves and we have a lot of times this picture of what we feel like we should look like and how we should feel. And if it's not that, then there's a lot of shame around that and hard work, and sometimes we're too hard on the body, and that can be damaging as well.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Tell me before we dive more into this, what drew you to Prolon?
Yes, yes. So as you mentioned in my bio, which thank you by the way, Denise, I've been a dietitian over 20 years and I spent the very beginning of my career in some prevention and then jumped into the hospital setting and I loved it. And I worked in critical care for a long time. But in 2020, as with many people, a lot of things changed and I had already had kind of an itch to do something different. I just wasn't sure what that was going to be. And the 2020 kind of pushed me to take that leap. I really had seen people in the end stages of life for so long. I wanted to help them not get there in the first place.
Oh,
What can I do? How can my impact be different? And so I transitioned to telehealth and just nutrition counseling with a different company. And then I have a specialty in diabetes and was really looking for something different out there and I saw this opportunity and I really was enamored with the science behind it. So and we may dig into this a little bit later, but fasting mimicking diet or FMD as we call it really has shown a lot of improvements in diabetes and driving disease remission and autoimmune diseases and in cancer. Um, Same fast, it's just the mechanism that operates on cleaning up all the cells in the body because it's not like we can target one area. So I was just so enamored by that. And I can't say that I fully believed in fasting when I started here, but in just full transparency,
yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm not sure 100%, but I do think this is really interesting and I love to learn. So I wanted to learn something new. And then when I got here and started working with members in our programs that we have, a diabetes program and a metabolic health program, we do baseline labs, we track those throughout. I saw the shifts that people were making. And in fact, saw that our research studies, the results that those show, our real world studies, or our real world outcomes are the same. And that is very, very exciting to see that be the same where you're in such a controlled environment with a research study versus what we see in real life when, life's up and down and people are not perfect. And I was just, I just felt like this is a real nutrition intervention. Food is medicine, as a lot of dietitians like to talk about, a
Yeah,
lot of other healthcare practitioners.
I
A
agree.
real food is medicine
Yeah.
tool that can truly have an impact.
Right, because we're it's something that we're doing every day, several times a day, and it does
Yeah.
makes a huge impact. Kind of piggybacking off of what you said, just a little backstory, about how I met you and about
Yes.
fasting. Also before I did the prolong fast, I wasn't a big fan of fasting. I like to do a gentle cleanse with nourishment and those types of things, but not a big fan of fasting. And one of my patients, I think she's a mutual patient, Myra, her transformation is just, she's an amazing woman. And just to see her go through this, and she was, I call her my pusher because you got to do this, you got to do this. And so, but just seeing her transformation alone, and then, I did it with a group of people. We're newbies at this, but I'm very fascinated with it and all these, which is so why I'm so grateful you're here. But, and the way that this is done, making sure that you have the nutrients, because we do need those nutrients to be able to
We do.
detoxify our body. We still need to be, and to maintain our muscle, right? Which is a big thing that I think a lot of
Huge.
research shows as the prolon, right?
Yes, absolutely. To me, that's one of our, or is our biggest differentiator between a lot of other programs out there. It's not just about, we don't talk so much about weight, but it's about body composition shifts.
Hmm.
And so it's driving visceral fat loss, that fat that we hold around our middle, our body fat, but maintaining muscle mass. It's key. It's key to women's health. It's key to men's health.
Yeah.
It's important for health span in general.
Yes. Brain health, cardiovascular, I mean, we need to keep our muscles energy. And for our women,
Yes.
and for women that are, trying to get pregnant, well, even women in menopause, right? We lose the estrogen. We need to
Yes.
really protect our muscle. And for women that are going through fertility, they need a lot of energy to make a baby. Like there's a lot of cellular energy that we need for that.
Yes, it is. And I think that is why this can be so helpful. I know you and I talked last week that I've worked with several women that come to us in our metabolic program looking to optimize their health prior to fertility treatments, or maybe even just trying on their own, but they recognize that I want to be in my best health. I want to give my body every chance it has to do what it needs to do what it knows how to do. And so that it's been really helpful um, for a lot of women, whether they have PCOS or, as you and I talked last week, I know that name is just shifted to PMOS, but it's important to be in a healthy place before conceiving. So
Percent, and that's the key word, before we try to get pregnant, because that's going to impact the health of not just the baby, but the health of the pregnancy, right?
mm,
Right.
yes,
I think I love that. So we were talking a little bit about the PMOS, previously known as PCOS, and how because of the shift in the metabolic rate, it can be really helpful. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what you've seen and maybe some research or?
yes. So our research shows when you do a prolonged fast and you get into autophagy, um, we see reduction in inflammation. That oftentimes is something we see frequently with PMOS. It's going to take me a while, Denise, to get
Okay,
this
I
new
know.
acronym down. But you see inflammation, you see insulin resistance, and a lot of women um, they struggle with, almost accepting a diagnosis that impacts their future. And I love that I'm seeing more and more women feel like I want to see what can I do? I don't want to just accept that as that's who I am now, but
Right.
are there things I can do to optimize? Are there things I can do to prevent that? So just I'm going to take you on the 5-day journey.
Awesome.
of the fast, like what's happening with your body. So on day one, and especially for your listeners who maybe are like, what are we talking about today? What is this fasting mimicking diet? But day one is really about 1,100 calories. So it's not too small of amount. I mean, it's less than you and I probably normally eat, but it's not crazy low. During that day, that because it's very precise macronutrients, and it's not about low calories, it's precise macronutrients. We don't trigger that IGF-1 that I talked about, one of our nutrient sensing pathways, or mTOR is another, and PKA. Those are the three ones that we talk about. We don't trigger those. So we're down regulating those sensors. When we do that on day one, our body is like, oh, what's going on? Ashley's not giving me these normal amounts of food that she does. And it starts to use up glycogen, which is glucose that we store in our muscle cells and our liver. It starts to use that up first. As we transition into day two, we have a little less calories. Then the body gets into this state called ketosis. And I think a lot of people now have heard that word, a keto diet, or they've heard some type of version of that word. And that's where the body burns fat, ketones, fatty acids. And that's not the purpose for the 5 days, but that does happen. And it can be on a mild level for people. But day three is where the body then is saying, uh-oh, we're not getting the nutrients we're used to having. So then it starts looking for misfolded proteins, mitochondria, pieces of cellular parts that are broken so
Uh-huh.
that it can consume those for energy.
Mm.
And so that's really how this cycling and cleaning up is happening. And then day 4 and 5, we allow a little extra time for fasting so that the body can go in and continue to deep clean. Think about it like spring cleaning. We can't we're not going to wash the curtains and the comforter and scrub the baseboards on our normal cleaning because nobody has time to do that on the regular basis. But we save a couple of times a year to do that. So that's really what's going on in the fast. We burn glucose and then we're burning fat,
Uh-huh.
and then the body can transition out. So it's this really cool process where the body is eating away at old misfolded proteins, damaged cellular components, mitochondria, so that it can be more efficient, more effective, and then the body builds new cells as we begin eating again. So it's really this whole process of improving cellular health.
Interesting. Question about that. That's amazing to know that the body will target the damaged cells before it would target the healthy cells. So,
Yes, yes. Think of it like if you lived in a colder climate and you're burning a fire and you run out of firewood. What are you going to turn to? You're not going to use up that brand new nice chair that you just purchased, or even probably heirloom furniture that's been passed down generation to generation in your family. You're going to look for that scrappy piece of maybe a bar stool that's scratched, and we're going to use up the old stuff, the stuff we don't need first. So that's what we're doing in autophagy. And then after that's used to help continue burning the fire, or in our body, the autophagy process, we are going to replace that bar stool with a brand new one, with
uh,
something that's effective and that works in the space, or whatever, so to speak, with furniture. But that's really what's happening. We're replacing old cellular parts with new parts. So the body over time becomes more effective, efficient. There's less inflammation, less insulin resistance.
mm. So the body starts to get rid of these um, pieces, these broken pieces that you call, and we clean up those damaged cells. It starts to produce new cells. Is that what I'm hearing? Or is it just making room for the healthy cells that are already there?
Yes, making room for the healthy cells that are already there. And when you resume eating, which during this, we resume eating on day 6 with regular foods, it's important to nourish well with healthy foods, things like berries and greens and complex carbohydrates with fiber, and maybe olive oil or nuts and avocados, fish, things like that. Because fasting initiates that autophagy, but good refeeding and fueling completes it. So it helps to replace those old parts with new parts.
Those
Yeah.
okay. Got it. Thank you. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, the analogies always help. Our chief medical officer has a lot of them, so I'm not going to take credit for coming up with these, but I always think they're great at helping to explain the story. So,
No, they make a huge difference. So I definitely like the analogies. There's this term floating around right now. I'm curious to know what your maybe you could define it. With these old cells, they call them, the term floating around is zombie cells. Would these be those zombie cells, or what's your thoughts around that?
yes. So there's zombie cells. You sometimes hear people talk about senescent cells.
Senescence.
And I think those are I think this is the same thing. I think we're talking about the same thing. But those are like cells that kind of have stopped dividing
Uh-huh.
in functioning normally in the body. So, for instance, like with diabetes, we have these beta cells, and those help produce insulin. And but over time, they're not working well. And so when we reduce that inflammation, when we reduce insulin resistance, there's been shown to be some activation there. So, and in fact, we see improvement in beta cell function overall when people do repeated cycles. That's in an animal study, but it's very promising. And over time, I hope there's more human studies showing that too, so that those people that have long-term insulin resistance buildup, where they begin to require it, will hopefully need less because their beta cell function will be improved.
Mm. Oh, and is there anything that um, we should be aware of to not do this cleanse that you know of? Is there any? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Very, very important. There are nuts in our products. They are whole foods. I like to tell everybody that too. It is gluten free, dairy free, basically vegan, with the exception of some honey in the honey nut bars. And then in one of the little pills that we send, that's like a micronutrient replacement. But nuts would be a limiting allergy. You wouldn't be able to do the fast comfortably since it is in most of our products. We do have things like olives, and the soups may not contain them, but it would be challenging. And so that would be a limiting factor. As far, though, as overall health goes, I don't want you to do a fast like this if you're pregnant or if you're breastfeeding. We need those nutrients during those times. Very, very important. Um, or if there's other medical conditions. For instance, we want to make sure you have good renal health. And so that's why working with in our program setting, we can help give some guidance there. We wouldn't want you to have had a recent like MI or stroke, or even with AFib, depending on that, we might want to get like cardiac clearance. But we see people of all different age ranges between 18 and 75, even some 80-year-olds that do really well with the fast, and they'll even do several cycles of fasting. We don't see anybody younger than 18 though, because they need to grow. They're in that growing state. They're growing muscle, their bones are still growing. So we don't ever want to take away from those that have those needs. So
Hmm. Yeah. Great. Good to know. Thank you. Can you just talk a little bit around how this can benefit gut health?
yes, that's a great question. So some people do prolonged fasting with water fasting. And it can be just as effective with autophagy and improving overall health, but you're not getting nutrients, so it makes it harder. When we do a nourished fast like ours, we're still stimulating the gallbladder, we're still sending really good, healthy foods into the body and stimulating the gut, and there's fiber, which is important. So when we reduce inflammation, when we reduce insulin resistance, and we're giving fuel, especially good food, to the body, then we're continuing to improve gut health as well.
Great, because that's really important. Well, for so many things, gut health. We're learning about how
Yeah.
important gut health is, and so many things impact it, from the foods that we eat to, the stresses, the thoughts we think, all the things in our right can really impact
Yes.
that
It
overstress
feels like
and
it's our
nourishment,
powerhouse. Growing
right?
up, you always think of your brain as your powerhouse, but truly your gut is powerhouse for your body and immune health, everything is
Right.
impacted.
100%. So that gut health is so important, and it's really important in fertility. Well, it's important in overall health. So I think we can just, we get the whole spectrum of
Yes.
how important that is. So that's another thing that I happen to love about this program is to help reset the gut health because I see a lot of women um, that either, have been stressed and maybe not nourishing their body enough, and that's impacted, or the foods that they've chosen
Hmm.
impacted their gut health. And so giving it's really a full body reset, right? And that's
It
a big
is. Yeah, it really is. The other thing that's really unique, Denise, that I didn't touch on, and we have multiple research studies that show this too. When you're coming out of the fast, there's some stem cell activation.
mm,
And that's really important, especially if you're somebody looking to build muscle right after the fast is a really good time to do that. But it's really important for those that are trying to improve their overall gut health, their overall health, to think about making sure that you're nourished well. And we have a variety of different types of fruits and vegetables, a variety of different micronutrients, and that's helpful for the body. So in our programs, we focus on that, not just the fast, but what are we eating in between to promote longevity? And we like to encourage more of a pescatarian type of vegetarian diet that really follows those commonalities in blue zones that we talk about that are low inflammatory types of foods, um, to really have that daily protection and then do a few cycles of fasting for that kind of periodic protection. And together, that's really a good longevity strategy.
mm, yeah, for longevity. That makes sense. I will just throw in if and you can agree or disagree. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I do think for
Yeah.
women that are going through reproductive health, that season of life, it is important to make sure that we're getting some nutrients from red meat because we're bleeding every month and we have to be able to replenish those nutrients as well. And there's a lot of nutrients in those meats that we need for a healthy egg quality, healthy baby. So would you agree? Would you disagree?
Yeah, this is a great question. Overall, because I don't work with women that are actually pregnant, we can optimize health before. We do tend to shift towards more pescatarian, vegetarian. But all that said, personalization is important.
Mhm.
So when I meet with anybody, it's not hard, fast by the rule. We want to meet
Love
somebody
that.
where they are and what their unique needs are. So for many women, especially if they're having heavy menstrual cycles and things, we want to focus on what is it that your body needs. Maybe it needs more iron, and oftentimes it is easy to get that with red meat. We try to push back on too much saturated fat.
Yeah.
So there are better cuts of red meat that you can use. We also focus on cooking methods and the type of oils to use with those. But we can also talk about some plant sources that are important to have and how to best absorb. We'll keep talking about iron specifically, but if you have foods that have high iron in them, and then you're consuming it with something that has vitamin C or ascorbic acid, the body will absorb it better. And so having somebody help you understand how to improve those things is really important. So personalization is always rank that up
Yeah.
there. That's important.
I
So
love that. Yeah,
yeah.
that is the key word, the personalization. I love that. Very true.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I do agree in general the Mediterranean diet, especially for longevity, we can't deny that. But I think there's also some meat included in there.
Yes.
Maybe, yeah, just
Absolutely.
depending
Yeah.
on, again,
Absolutely. So
realizing what that would look like. Yeah. Um, okay, great. Thank you. For women struggling with fertility, PCOS, or hormone imbalance, what role can that fasting mimicking diet, that FMD, play a support in the journey?
yeah, that's really where, with PCOS specifically, that inflammation and insulin resistance are the like two key components that really drive that. So doing several cycles of fasting. And when I say that, you might be wondering, what does that mean? How many cycles? In our metabolic program, we do baseline labs and encourage 4 cycles of fasting over a period of like 5 months. And then we do labs after. So we just want to make sure we're spacing that out with about 25 days in between. But that cycles of fasting is where we can really drive those numbers down. So fasting blood glucose or A1C, if your physician's looking at that. Um, but overall, just inflammation. And part of that is that body shift, the body
Mhm.
composition shift of reducing that fat is really, really where we see improvements in health and kind of optimizing whether you are looking to, you know, conceive or you're just looking to kind of manage and potentially and improve that overall health and maybe even be able to come off of the medication that you're taking. I know many women with PCOS take some metformin on a regular basis
Right.
to help improve their overall health. So it's really helpful in all of those cases. And then coupling that with, as I mentioned, healthy eating, but you don't have to be a saint every day. We don't push for that either. I think that can be stressful for a lot of women. I mean, food
True.
is one of life's enjoyment, so finding balance, but also focusing on other lifestyle medicine pillars of health, stress management. I know you talked about that at the beginning. It's so key.
Yeah.
Sleep, strength training for women and men too, but exercise and those and community is important. There's a lot of loneliness today, even in with all of the technology and things going on. I think a lot of people struggle with that. These are all components to our overall health.
Yeah, 100%. Shifting gears more towards perimenopause, menopause, what are some of the things that you've seen this fasting mimicking diet, help improve?
Hmm. I see women that just, and I know you do too, that feel stuck.
Mm-hmm.
They just feel stuck. They have low energy. They don't feel like themselves anymore. They're not happy with their appearance. They feel like, gosh, I've been doing the same thing for years, but now I'm gaining weight when before I was fine. There's
Absolutely.
all of these challenges that they face. And a lot of them kind of, it's almost like this vicious cycle of, maybe they're hungry or maybe they're not. They keep facing these challenges that just kind of culminate over time and fatigue and then just frustration. And so I feel like this program is helpful one because there's support. And a lot of times we just need that. We need motivation, we need accountability. A lot of times we know the types of things we need to do, but having somebody help put those into actionable steps, into baby steps so it's not overwhelming, but then having the tool like the FMD in there to help drive that, which, by the way, I didn't mention this in the beginning. We have studies showing that it really impacts cravings
Mm,
too. So a lot of times people do the 5-day fast and they are feeling more empowered, more in control of their health. That's what I always love for many on day 4 and 5. But I know you experienced it in a harder way too. It wasn't always easy. And so we have
right,
to, it's different person to person. Um, but it's this shift towards overall health, and so it kind of happens on a different cadence, and it helps support women by driving down that fat loss when we because that's where we tend to put it on as we age, it seems more so around the middle, improving their muscle health and then working on specific things that may be impacting sleep. Maybe that's stress. Maybe that's late night eating, and those things impact our hunger hormones, which makes us eat more. So trying to really look at root causes of disease. FMD helps with that, but also working with a practitioner that's really looking at the whole clinical picture to
right,
really tackle those and really not be so symptom management, band-aid focus, but really
right.
let's look at the full clinical picture, treat those root causes. Then people start to see overall improvements too.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I find um, that, how do I want to say it? Um, it takes work.
Right.
It takes some energy, it takes some work, and really making that decision to focusing on what we want, and whether it's improved quality of life, vitality, helping us get pregnant, longevity, right? All those things. But it takes work. It's not just a magic pill. And I think that's something that is important for us to recognize. I think a lot of us are, a lot of people that I work with anyway, in the beginning, they tend to think that they're looking for that one thing, the easiest thing, but it's maybe simple. But it's not always easy. And that's one thing I like about the Prolon is they make it simple for you, but it's not necessarily easy.
Yeah, which is right. And you're right. And it's hard because we live in an age of instant gratification
Yeah.
and like, oh, if I just do this one intervention,
Hmm.
then I can continue to live the way I want to live.
Right.
Um, but that doesn't mean that that's helpful for you for life. And in fact, sometimes that can be detrimental in many ways. So it's this program, I feel like over time teaches you that you can have control and it helps ease some of the things you start to see some shifts in your body and changes. And that's motivating too.
That is
When
motivating.
you realize something's working, okay, but nothing is fast. And honestly, most of the time, anything that's fast, it's probably too good to be true. There's gonna be some type of repercussion later,
Yeah.
which is why I like that even for my members, like, I'm thinking of a lady that I worked with well, we still work together, but she started with me about 2 years ago, and she was just so frustrated and school teacher, busy life, taking care of aging parents. And really, her health was on the back burner, as probably many of the women that you and I talk to on a regular basis. And they realize, like, I've got to do something about this. And for her, in her case, her weight had gotten up to 350. She was just busy, didn't make time for exercise, didn't feel like she had the time. Um, and actually, her doctor was threatening for her to take a GLP-1, and she was afraid of injections. She doesn't like shots. And so she really was like, okay, I need to do something. My labs, my biomarkers are now showing I'm in prediabetes range. I don't want to fall into that same kind of patterns that my parents did. And so we worked together. She did several cycles of fasting. We worked on simple things, Denise, with her diet, not even like extreme things about giving up meat or anything like that, but just why don't we just shift from less processed food? Why don't we add an extra vegetable here this day? Why don't we cook with olive oil instead of with canola? Like just little simple
Right.
things
Right.
and nice, slow, and steady weight loss. We lost 50 pounds, but in a year
Wow.
and put on some muscle, increased our steps from like 900 today to 8,000 a day, slowly, not all at once.
Well,
And
yeah,
that's really how we drove that health. She no longer is in the prediabetes range. She feels so much better. And so these are things that, as you mentioned, it's not instant, but
not instant.
she's feeling better.
Right.
She's looking better. She's sleeping better. She's handling stress better. And I will never forget when she emailed me in the fall, um, 2 falls ago, and she was like, I am on my way to fit to 50. That was part of her
Wow.
motivation. She was 49 and all of a sudden realizing like, gosh, I am not headed in the trajectory that I want to be in. This does not have a good outlook. I want to do something different. And so um we still work together quarterly, but it's knowing that I can still be in control of my health. I still have a say in who I am and who I'm becoming. My future looks better. So that's so important.
I love that. Thanks for sharing the story. I was going to ask you, would you
Yeah.
mind sharing one? That was a beautiful story, Ashley.
Yes, I love that one. There's many like that. There's another lady that comes to mind too. She just kept saying, I just want to feel like myself again. And, she had a pair of jeans that she wanted to be able to fit back into. And we were able to do that over time, but it also shifting her mindset to not be so focused on a number on the scale. Many women are so focused on that, and that isn't necessarily a picture of health.
Right.
It's more about kind of the process and getting there and having the right fuel and exercise. We focus on other things besides just one number.
Right. There's so much more to that number
Mhm.
on the scale. Is there anything that you would like to share leave with our listeners? Something that, like a message you would like to leave them with?
Yeah, I love for people to know that there are resources out there. There's people like you, Denise, that are there to give guidance and to really help improve their health. You have their best interest at mind. I actually saw the member that you talked about yesterday, and she asked me, she was like, "Are you going to be on a podcast soon?" And it was just fun. So she gave me a little backstory and the connection. But she's working in a program, and she said it's been really helpful for her and empowering. I want the listeners to know that there are programs out there. So I work out of, as you mentioned, L-Nutra Health. We have a metabolic program that's 6 months, and we do 4 cycles of fasting, but it's so much more because we're really working with you twice a month. You have your own RD coach that's really kind of a nutrition partner for you. And that guidance, that personalization, that's really important to help you achieve the outcomes that you're looking for. So I would encourage anyone here that's curious, wants to know more, even just to have a phone conversation. You can set up a free call to learn more about the programs, but you could go to www.l-nutra, health.com to learn more there.
Awesome. And we'll put that link in the description below so you guys can access that. And I do just want to share my experience has been incredible with the support, not only just the daily support that you offer during the fast, but the customer service for help and, our conversation that we had. Just so much, there is a lot of support, which is beautiful. Yeah.
Yes. And the last thing I would say, Denise, that I love, we have this slide when I give presentations that I love. I call it the blue man because it like points to the brain and the liver and all of these different things, including the skin, all of these improvements to overall health. And you think, gosh, what one pill can you take that improves beta cell function, improves your relationship with food, improves fatty liver, increases muscle mass, or at least protects it, and helps your biomarkers like your cholesterol and your A1C, so many others. I can't think of one pill that does that. But cellular rejuvenation and renewal and inducing that autophagy, that has that pleiotropic tropic effect on the body like no one pill can have. And so if you take away anything from this, recognize that food is medicine and that this intervention with the support of clinicians like Denise and myself, it can really help your overall health span so that not that your weight looks better, your biomarkers are better, but that you feel more like yourself, that you are empowered to take control and that you can improve your overall health span.
Love that. We say if you give your body what it needs, it will heal itself. So
Yes.
that, and this is a big, big step in that. So, Ashley, I loved our conversation. I think it's really helpful and empowering for a lot of our listeners. And I learned so much just talking with you. So, thank you. I really, really enjoyed this and I appreciate your time. And we'll have all the information in the description below. And until next time, have a beautiful, beautiful day.
Yes. Thank you, Denise. So enjoyed the time with you and with everyone today.
Thank you.